I want to comment briefly on the proposed constitutional amendment to eliminate the Electoral College that my colleagues are introducing this week. It's just the latest radical proposal by the Democrats to upend our constitutional system of government. But why all the sudden interest in these changes? Very simple. The Democrats and their media wing still can't get over that they lost the 2016 election. So they spent the last 2 years looking for scapegoats. First, it was the collusion hoax, but the Mueller report has put an end to that. So now they blame the Constitution itself and want to eliminate the Electoral College, which they claim robbed the so-called popular vote winner of her rightful office. But let's be clear about something up front. We have never had a presidential election with a popular vote winner or loser in the genuine meaning of those words. It's not how we contest the presidency, and it never has been. Campaigns organize their entire strategy around the Electoral College. And guess what? Hillary Clinton did too. She just didn't do it very well. For the losers to complain afterwards that they really won is like a football team who gets outscored but says it won the game because it made more first downs. Or a basketball team that got outscored but says it won the game because it made more free throws. But let's suppose that we do change the rules of the game. Let's suppose we get rid of the Electoral College. What would we get? Well, get ready for nationwide recounts and election contests. If you thought Bush v. Gore was a circus, or that California's ballot harvesting operations are fraud, wait until you see a nationwide recount. Getting rid of the Electoral College would also encourage fringe third parties. With all of the instability we see in European parliamentary elections, neither candidate got 50% of the vote in 2016. Imagine an election where a winner doesn't even get 40% of the vote. How would the Democrats respond to that? And of course, getting rid of the Electoral College would further reduce the role of the states in our elections. The founders believed rightfully that the states are sovereign political communities with real interests and real views that deserve to have a voice in the national government, apart from simple nationwide majority rule. The founders didn't want our vast continental nation ruled like colonies from a few coastal capitals. They wanted our one true national office holder to understand and account for the diverse ways in which we work and live and think. Under the Electoral College, which I hasten to add, just like in the Senate, the states can express their will as states. Hawaiians get to speak as Hawaiians about who the president ought to be. The same goes for Vermonters and Arkansans. Doing away with the Electoral College would be especially harmful to the small states, while concentrating power in big states and a few mega cities. So it's not surprising to see senators from California and New York and Illinois supporting this radical proposal. They have obvious reasons to weaken the smaller states, but I have to confess, I'm a little surprised that my colleague from Hawaii is joining their effort, because it would relegate his small island state to the status of a colony, ruled from afar by a few vast cities on the mainland. Hawaii, with its 1.4 million people, would have less say in our presidential elections than does San Diego. It would barely outpace Dallas, Texas. Politicians who support abolishing the Electoral College say it will break the supposed stranglehold that rural red states have on our elections. But this isn't really this isn't a red or blue issue. Hawaii, Rhode Island, Vermont, the District of Columbia, they all have a greater say about who leads our country thanks to the Electoral College. And none of those places are Republican strongholds, last I checked. Nor does one party ever have a so-called stranglehold on the Electoral College. Far from it. In the 1980s, people spoke about the Republicans' Electoral College lock. In more recent times, they've spoken about the Democratic Party's blue wall in the Electoral College. My state and New Mexico, for instance, were fiercely contested in the Bush era. Not so much anymore. In 2008, Barack Obama won Pennsylvania's 20 electoral votes in a cakewalk. 8 years later, Donald Trump eked out a victory in the Keystone State. Next year, Ohio might not be a competitive presidential election state, but Texas may be. Politics can change fast, and the Electoral College changes with it, forcing candidates to consider our entire vast country. Without it, a candidate actually could ignore Wisconsin, yet still win. I should also point out that my colleague's amendment this week is not the only proposal to scrap the Electoral College. A number of states have also signed on to a so-called interstate compact that would require those states to ignore the expressed will of their voters and award their electoral votes to whoever wins the national popular vote. It's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. I would prefer to call it the Small State Suicide Compact. It's designed to circumvent the difficult process of amending our Constitution, which of course means it is unconstitutional. There's already a process for changing the Constitution. It's called the amendment process. So I will give some praise to my colleagues this week for filing a constitutional amendment to change the Electoral College legally. But I would point out that the Democratic Party's willingness to bypass our Constitution to eliminate the Electoral College reveals that what's at stake here is not really democratic principle, but one single thing: power, seizing it and holding on to it. Me, I think I'll stick with the Constitution. Alexander Hamilton said of the Electoral College, "If it be not perfect, it's at least excellent." I'm with Hamilton. Mr. President, I yield the floor.